In western North Carolina, we can still tend to some gardening chores even in the month of January. But you know, this is really the time to do some planning, even maybe making some New Year's resolutions. For us gardeners, those resolutions may include things like improving our gardening practices, to improve our water usage in the garden, perhaps to protect the environment, or perhaps to be more frugal with our expenditures this year. So in addition to a few garden chores, I'd like to start by giving you a few New Year's resolutions. The first step would be plan before you plant. By taking the time to evaluate any planting location, you actually should have better results in selecting your plants, and you won't be wasting time and effort by putting the wrong plant in the wrong place. Now, part of that planning includes not only in evaluating your sun, shade, soil, and so forth, but also measuring each site. By knowing how much space you have to work with, you'll know how to space your plants properly so that they will thrive. You won't waste money by purchasing more plants than you actually need. And when we're talking about areas like lawns and gardens where you may be applying lime, fertilizers, grass seed, and so forth, by knowing how many square feet you are working with, you know how much product you actually need to purchase and to apply. Another important step, of course, is going to be doing that soil test. Soil testing, of course, is a step that's practically free. All it's going to cost you is a little bit of postage to ship a soil sample to the soil testing lab. Once you get the results back so that you know if you need to make corrections in your soil acidity or other nutrients, you'll know how much lime or fertilizer actually you need to apply, so that first of all, again, you won't lose some of the value of those plants that you have planted because they don't thrive or survive, and also you won't be wasting money on putting out things that your soil doesn't need. Once you have evaluated the site, you should be able to select the right plant for the right location. That includes plants that are going to be best suited for the growing conditions, as well as plants that are not going to get too large for the location. Doing this planning up front ahead of time is going to be worthwhile in the long run, so again, you're not wasting all that time and effort and the expenditure by having to come back in a year or two and perhaps replace plants that didn't survive or at least aren't doing well, or in a few years to replace plants that got too large. For example, if you've got a sunny afternoon location in front of a brick wall and perhaps a low window, this would not be a good location to put azaleas. Yes, they would be a good size, but they are not going to do well out in this hot sun. Even if you keep azaleas well watered, they're not going to thrive, and they're going to be very prone to problems like azalea lacebugs. But if you select a plant like this glossiobelia that will thrive in these sunny conditions, the plant will do well with very little attention. And if you select dwarf growing varieties, it's not going to get too large for this particular location. Another thing we're going to be planning for probably this year is wise water use in the landscape. Yes, that can include selecting drought-tolerant plants for the landscape. It could also include, though, dividing your landscape areas by water use zones. So where you have this very sunny, dry location, this is the area where you put plants that are going to be very drought-tolerant and shouldn't need extra water even in that type of location. If you have plants like ferns and hostas, put those all together in a suitable area so that the only watering you need to do is in that smaller area, and hopefully those plants are going to be close to a water source such as your rain barrels or your cisterns. Of course, if you haven't installed rain barrels or cisterns yet, this would be a good year to do that and make sure you make good use of those. Whatever your water source, do make sure that you check the soil before watering. Don't water just because it's a certain day of the week, but actually dig down below the mulch and check the soil to make sure that it is dry enough to actually need watering. And then, of course, do consider using soaker hoses or drip irrigation as being the most efficient way to apply the water. Mulch, of course, is an excellent way to retain moisture in the soil, but again, you do not want too much mulch. Your mulch should be a total of about 3 inches deep. You don't want it to accumulate any deeper than that. It's actually not good for the plants. So when you are adding additional mulch, top dressing, don't do too much. More than 3 inches depth of mulch not only is not beneficial to the plants, you actually will be just wasting money on material that actually can be harmful. If you're maintaining a lawn area, maintain that correct mowing height at least 3 inches. The higher you mow, the deeper root system that lawn will have, which of course will make it more drought tolerant. Ideally, you should also be using a mulching mower. By recycling those grass clippings onto the lawn, the clippings act as a natural mulch and also help to recycle nutrients. Whether it's a lawn area or garden area, do not over-fertilize, and of course apply fertilizer at the right time. If you fertilize areas too much, that actually encourages excess growth, which makes plants less drought tolerant. And of course you also are not using your money very efficiently by buying more fertilizer than you need. In fact, although plants may not be as green or grow as rapidly as you would like them to, plants aren't going to die if you have to skip a year on fertilizing. Practice wise pest management. That starts, of course, with selecting the right plants for the location so that the plants are just not going to be as prone to pest problems. If your plants do develop pest problems, make sure that you identify what the problem actually is before attempting to treat it. Too many people just go out and buy pesticides to try it and see if something helps for the problem. That ends up, of course, creating problems because, well, first of all, you may waste a lot of money by buying pesticides that don't even work. Second of all, you are introducing pesticides into the landscape or into the environment that didn't need to be there, and you may be creating storage and disposal problems for yourself by having all these excess and unused pesticides on hand. Of course, this is the ideal time of year to get out those garden catalogs and use the catalogs for a little armchair gardening to start reading the catalogs, getting product descriptions, and making some of those decisions for the year. When we do have some nice weather to get outside, take advantage of those days. If you have some shade trees, ornamental trees that need some corrective pruning, it's fine to go out and remove tree branches this time of year. It's not a good time to prune fruit trees other than those mature apple trees. You want to wait till late February or early March before you prune any young trees or peach trees. You can also prune those grapevines now, and the Cooperative Extension Office does have videos available for loan on pruning grapevines or fruit trees. This is also a good time to plant those young fruit trees, and of course don't forget about that living Christmas tree. If you haven't gotten it in the ground, anytime the ground is not frozen is a good time to go ahead and get that tree planted as soon as possible. If you'd like additional information on gardening in western North Carolina, be sure to contact us at Buncombe County's Cooperative Extension Office.